Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Future of Space. I'm your host, Daniel Fox. Our guest today is Helene Huby. Helen is co-founder and CEO at the Exploration Company, founder of Urania Ventures, and founder of the Karman Project. Helen, welcome to The Future of Space.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
Now, I know it's 6 o'clock where you are. You're in Germany, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great. So we'll have a nice conversation and then we can let you go and have dinner and a nice glass of wine. Helen, before we go into your projects and your journey into space, could you share with us 3 words that capture the essence of space for you?
Okay. I think the first word for me is team, because what we do in space is incredibly hard and it relies on every team member to deliver. And when someone does not deliver, I think this is one of the very, very few industry when, a catastrophe actually can come out of a failure of just one person or a few person. So this creates an incredible mindset of humility, of teamwork, and I've never found such a mindset in other industries. So that's really the first word that come to my mind, and that's one of the reasons why I love to work in space is because of this very, very special team spirit. Then the second word is inspiration, because space is part of our future. Space is something that every person can see, from the Earth. It's something beautiful. So the beauty speaks to our heart, our artistic sense. It's something that people want to understand. So it speaks to our mathematical, part of our mind, to our engineering part of our mind, because we want to use technology to go there. And it's also very inspiring because when there was one space station between the Americans and the Russians. This was in the middle of the Cold War, and I think this was an inspiration for peace. So I know this is not the case today, but I wish that, sometime in the future, we can have such an inspiration in our way to exploration. And the last word is grit, because it's just very hard to build spaceships or rockets or whatever. Typically, it takes, 5 to 6 years, sometimes more. You go through really ups and downs, and it's a journey you embark on for many, many years. If you start the program and then you go up to the launch, so it requires grit from every team member, and this is also something I love in this industry.
I love it when, I've interviewed 40 plus people, and then there's the words that come back often of what space represents. And I'm always happy when there's a new word. And I have to say that your word team is the first one that someone shares that with me. Other people have expressed a similar feeling about space and the necessity to work together, but no one has officially come up with the word team. So thank you very much for adding a new word to the list of these words that capture the essence of space. Now, Helen, there's a science story, there's a technology story of going to space, all these innovations that we're going to get out of it, the increase of knowledge. But beyond that, what for you do you think is the human story of going to space?
Yeah, I think on the positive side, let's put it like that, it's really at the core of our DNA. It's curiosity. And this is true since the very, very first beginning of humanity. The first kind of human race started in Africa and then traveled, explored, so to say, to Europe, and we don't know yet exactly how they arrived to the Americas, if the Earth were together or not, but whatever, they explored. And we've seen that again and again in our history. Every time we master a technology, we master the technology to cross, for example, the oceans. This was the invention of what is called the caravel, so these ships, in the 16th century. And then again, we explore. We master the technology to go to the air. Again, we explore. And now we are mastering step by step the technology to go to space, not in the way of the Apollo mission, which was, okay, we spent billions to develop the program, and then one flight would cost again billions, and we only would send 3 people, but one actually would stay waiting for the 2 others, which was amazing. It was amazing. But now we are at the edge of actually being able to fly people in a complete different manner with vehicles which are like our cars or like airplanes, which are reusable. They can be refueled in orbit, and at the end of the day, they can be refueled with propellant made from space resources. And this will not come in one day, but this is coming. And I think when it comes, we will just explore again. So the human story, I think, is the one of curiosity and of exploration. Now, if I take, a different look, which is perhaps a more negative look, there is, of course, power, which is a great driver for this exploration. There is a race to master the resources of the moon, water, and helium-3, just to quote a few. There is, of course, money, and this is, also very positive because it means that that's going to be sustainable. But what I believe is that we are in the way of building the first infrastructure with a lot of public money, and this was again true in the past. Highways or the first telco infrastructures or windmills also were built with a lot of public money at the beginning because the cost of building were high, the uncertainty about what you're going to build were high, and the revenues were low because it was a new infrastructure. But then we will see also a time when this infrastructure is kind of being built, the cost of maintaining it is known, so less risk on the cost side, more people using it, so more revenues, and then we will see, I think, business step by step developing itself on top. We see that already with the space station, which was the first public infrastructure, and it's moving towards private. And for the lunar environment, it will take more time, but I think that's also the direction. So money is a big driver. And then I think a last driver that I'd like to quote on the, like, say, 3 perhaps less positive driver is fear. Fear that perhaps we'll not be able, to manage properly our planet. Doesn't mean that we don't have to do everything we can to preserve it. But there is also this driver, especially in the rhetoric of Elon Musk, saying, "Okay, we need a B plan." This is not my driver. Very clearly, I am driven by the exploration driver, by the curiosity, by the willingness to push the boundaries, also to create an ecosystem which will be more cooperative than the one we have. But that's a driver that also exists. So fear, money, power on one hand, and on the other hand, this, let's say, very incredible curiosity drive that we have, all of us.
I mean, this is what the human species, I mean, life always is this force that wants to go to places. It constantly is, not moving forward, but trying to go everywhere. Like I always say that, if I have a glass of water, the only reason why water is not going anywhere is because it's been contained. If it's broke, then it goes everywhere. And it's like it's just going to keep going until it reaches the ocean. And even when it reaches the ocean, the only thing that keeps it together is because of gravity on the planet. But it's always, and the humans have just been extremely good at taking that force and taking it to the next step. So, you said Africa at the beginning. We went beyond the mountains, we went beyond the desert. Once we got ourselves at the beach, we tried to figure out how to get on the ocean and past. And I can only imagine back in those days, in the early days, the first time that people ventured on the water, the experience was, could be deadly. Like they went on without understanding the how to navigate or where to navigate. And, when the European migration to North America, the amount of people who risked their lives to get on those boats, not knowing exactly where they were going or surviving. And now, we're getting to this place where the technology, I think that there's a human cost of exploration that we've surpassed. We won't see again that the human cost that, let's say, during the European exploration, the age of exploration, the European migration. There's a lot of stories of people who left and and died in the process. But now we have robots that can go to different places, gather the knowledge, so that by the time that we go over there, it's not like we don't go blind. Would you agree with that?
I think they probably, indeed, I mean, if we compare, with in terms of percentage, because I'm not a specialist of history, so but I would say probably 10 to 15%, perhaps even more, of the people who explored died because of the weather, because of health problems, etc., etc. I agree that if we think about, well, let's just take an example of the past again. If we speak about space station, no, but this is the first example of exploration, right? And of course, and it's. I mean, we have, I think, every each of us who is old enough, we have in our mind, the accident of Challenger, for example. We have in our mind also other accidents. But if we think in terms of percentage, and sorry again to speak about the figures, but we are way below this 10 to 15%. And this is just a proof that, just a few decades ago, actually, technology has improved enough so that when we launch people into space, there is still a very high risk. The most reliable launcher, we speak about 98, 99%, so ways more risky than the aviation. But it's a risk that we, let's say, we master better than the one when we were exploring. And I think indeed that looking at Mars, looking at the moon, we will first go in places where we basically know the environment. I mean, that's the role of the gateway, for example. We kind of replicate the space station because the environment is known. And then if something not so great, is not functioning at lunar surface, there is always the possibility to fly back to the gateway and fly back to an environment which is known and mastered since now decades. So I agree that robots and also kind of replicating the space environments that we've known are going to be a key so that this exploration, there'll be some casualties because I can't imagine that without, but in comparison to what it was at the 16th century, etc., weighs less.
Now, you are heavily involved in the space industry community. I mean, with you're on the board of several company, Orbit and others, and you have three big companies that you're leading. Was space always a big attraction for you? Can you share with us the journey of Helen, from Helen as a young Helen and today? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, you may be surprised because I loved space when I was young, but I loved also many other things like cello and mathematics and etc. So it was a passion among others, I would say. Decided to study mathematics and economics, so nothing to do with space, and then spent the first 5 years of my career investing into startups and working for advising also large corporations about their digital innovation strategy. So space is not here. And then the truth is, I followed my husband. So I'm a mother of 4 children, and he got a new job. I followed him, and this is how I entered at Airbus. So Airbus hired me. I was not an aerospace engineer, but I knew something about innovation, and they wanted to have a profile that would be a bit different. 3 months after I arrived, I became head of innovation for defense and space, the whole defense and space part. And I just felt in love with space actually at this point in time. So took some MIT online courses to really understand, spend many times with much time with experts actually. So really like being trained again, like doing some kind of orbital calculations just to understand. My objective was that I need to be able to explain to my children, how a rocket engine is functioning, like the basics principle, how a rocket is functioning, how a spacecraft is functioning, etc., how satellites functioning, etc. So, and then step by step, I got, operational responsibility. I led a program of a small launcher, and then the last, program I was involved in, I was the vice president for the European Service Module. So that was an amazing program, to be part of. Uh, and if you love something, you want to do more, right? So I was very happy with my job at Airbus, but also was seeing this extremely dynamic environment of space tech startups. So I created an investment company called Urania Ventures. We invested about 20 startups. Got the permission to do that on the side of my job at Airbus, thanks to the CEO at that time, Tom Enders, and also created a nonprofit foundation, so called the Karman Project. And we are at the beginning of this discussion talking about cooperation and exploration. So the Karman Project is a private platform funded by only by family money, people who want to remain, let's say, anonymous mecene for the time being. And we select every year 15 top space leaders around the world. So American astronauts are among our fellows, but also Chinese astronauts, but also CEO of China companies, CEO of African companies, CEO of European companies, CEO of US companies. And we gather these people for 4 days. All the conversations are shared under Chatham House rules. So everything's kept basically secret. And you have to speak as a person. And our objective is to create trust, personal trust between the one who shaped the future of space. Because we are all humans. We are all passionate about what's going to happen in space. All we have responsibility. So all we're going to contribute to shape this future, basically. And if we know each other as person, the chances that one day we can cooperate, even if our governments don't want that for the time being, is higher. And I think especially at a time when the dialogue is more and more difficult, this personal connection between people can help maintain a dialogue on a personal basis, which will help longer down the road cooperation. So that's what we're doing with the Karman Project. And at the end of these 4 days, we ask everyone to take a commitment to make space a better place, and we fund the starting point of these commitments, basically. So these are basically that's my journey, and then I left Airbus to create the exploration company, because while working on Orion, well, you discover the drive of the exploration. You discover that that's going to be one of the very, very important next step of space. But you also realize that, at least in Europe, you have very few, I mean, you have no vehicle basically, which is at the technological standard that what I think shall be a vehicle in the current decade. That is to say, reusable, can be refueled, and not in this decade, but the next decade can be refueled with resources coming from space. But it means you need to develop that technology right now because it takes time. So the technological choices you do now are going to be operational in 5 to 6 to 7 years from now. So we know when we project ourselves in 5 to 6 to 7 years, I believe again spaceships will be built like cars, step by step, so in a very industrial manner with the same architecture both for the moon, for Mars, for the low Earth orbit. There'll be like super big container ship like Starship. There'll be also trucks like us, so smaller, but all this ecosystem will have to function together. So we're using the same propellant than SpaceX because we want to be part of the space ecosystem. We want to complement the Starship. So basically, we came up with this idea with the willingness to do something that would have a European DNA, but of course that would be global. So we will open our subsidiary in the US next year already. And then we left Airbus in July 21. When I say we, because I co-founded the company with some member of my teams. And in 10 months now, we raised about $12 million, which is quite a lot for a European company. And we're going to deliver our first spacecraft, qualified, ready for fly in October, so in a few months. Very excited about that. So that's really the journey.
Well, first of all, congratulations on raising the money. And yes, I agree. For a European company, it is quite an accomplishment and a testimony for the caliber of your team and the project, and obviously the level at where you're working. So a big congrats on that. By the way, are your children, any of your children, are interested in space and following up their mother?
So the only thing I want for my children is that they do what they love, and I try to give them, love and trust so that they love themselves and they trust themselves and they make for them, whatever the best choice is for them, depending on their skills. But among the four, so there are two, my son and the last one, who are especially interested in space, asking a lot of questions, want to understand, sometimes also challenged. So that's really great because I get challenged at home, like, well, your deck is not, you're not going to sell anything with that kind of deck. So very, very interesting. But also it depends. The two others are interested by many other things.
I love what you're doing at the Karman Project. When I do solo wilderness expeditions. I did that for 15 years. One of my strategies to capture the spirit of these locations that I went was always I would go and stay with people, local people, because I always thought that it would be arrogant of me to go to places that I've never been and think that I can capture it without really understanding what it is for the people that live there. And by sitting at a table and sharing a meal and hearing their stories, I came to understand that independently of our views of life or beliefs or different um, uh, understanding of priorities, we all want the same thing. We all want to care for, we want to be valued, we want to put food on the table, and we want to care for family and send our children. That is really at the core of our humanity. And when you gather people from different cultures and you sit them around on a table sharing a meal, and you get that human connection, and then you start to realize, gosh, we're all the same. We all want, and food for me is that food is that celebration of humanity. And in North America, you realize when you see the place of food in minorities, they come from places that are really hard. If you can bring the family on the table around food, then you have hope, right? You have this sense of, like, independently of what happens outside in the world, if we can bring ourselves around that table and share bread and break bread, then we can continue. Then we have this sense of connection. Is like, I don't know the program at Karman Project, but when you gather these people, do you bring them around on the table and share a meal? I mean, is it a big part of the experience?
You were speaking about food and sharing bread, etc. So the program we have at the Karman Project is really around, I would say, these philosophies and this line of um, getting to know as persons. To describe it briefly, so it's 4 days. The first 2 days are focused on having discussions with top leaders from anything but space. So we had, for example, Yomar, the cellist. We had, for example, Evan Spiegel. We had the Nobel Prize, Mohamed Yunus. So amazing people who've transformed the world around us. And this objective of having the talk with these people, so you can imagine it's just 15 fellows and this amazing person talking together in a secret environment. I mean, the conversation is kept secret, which is what I want to say. The heart's open, and people can learn so much. The fellows can learn so much about how is our world today, because they have the chance to speak with people who are hyper specialized in one specific area, and also they have the chance to be inspired by amazing leaders. So this is really what the first 2 days are about. The next 2 days are about space in 10 to 20 years. So we organize workshops or games. For example, we had last year the chance to work with the chief creative officer of Imagine, so the producer of Mars, the Netflix series, and who basically gave some tips about how to produce a film. And we divided the 15 fellows into 3 groups, and asked each of the group to produce, to invent a film that would happen in space in 20 years. And so they were working together with different nationalities, thinking together about how space would look like in 20 years, and produce a kind of movie. But of course, behind you have a lot of strategy. And on top of this, I would say intellectual stuff. We swim together, we eat together. Last year was in Dubai, so we spent one night in the desert together, for example. And this is really incredible bonding just between persons. And exactly what you said, once we have this link between persons, and as this link remains, right, we create friendship and we create hope for the future.
I mean, that's the human experience. That is what brings value to where we're going. And to understand that space is not necessarily just about rockets or going to the moon, but it's about elevating the human experience. I mean, we're talking to some hospitality company, and we are tapping them so that they can start the conversation of what is going to be that human experience in space, that hospitality. How are we going to take what we have? Because obviously now going to space has really become more of a wilderness camping, really bare bone with just like a dry free, dry frozen foods, and it's really harsh. But nobody, I mean, most of the people are not going to go over there to experience that, or our future is not going to have that kind of that's not the experience that we're going to take with us. We're going to have everything that we have on this planet, we're going to take it with us. So yes, there's a lot of there's a need for engineers and science and the people who can get the rocket and can get the structure going. But beyond that, we need to talk with artists, musicians, philosophers, cooks, and so that we can elevate the experience and take the human experience, to the next step. I mean, for me, the way that often I think about it is, back, if we go back again with the European migration, the age of exploration, it's, we would be talking about boats. Oh, boats are amazing. And then we have a new sail. We can go further with the big boats. But what these boats represented, they gave us access to a new land of opportunity. And that new land of opportunity created a place for people to envision and to create a world. I mean, obviously there were some bad things in the process, but it also, it was the beginning of a new philosophy of life, or the world. And this is what space is going to be. It gives us the capacity to create a new future with these values that are important to us. And you're talking about team earlier. Team is, a lot of people understand the necessity to come together. And there's a lot of people that talk about the Jedi mindset, which is the just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive future. So I love what you're doing in the Karman Project. Was that something that came to you, that always wanted to do when you had the opportunity? How did the Karman Project came together?
Um, Again, I hope the story will not disappoint you, but it's no, actually, I was working on Orion, um, and when you work on an exploration project, of course, you experience, I would say, hands-on the competition between the United States and China. And so I was in vacation after a very, very long month of hard working. And I looked at the past and I said, okay, that vehicle is going to be delivered. We're going to fly it. And so what's next? And so I had the impression I could do more. I had the impression I could be more useful, I would say, with my time. And it was really around this idea of, okay, that vehicle is great. It's a cooperation between the United States and Europe, but that's not enough. And then basically the idea came was a bit like looking like a crazy idea at the beginning. Like, okay, we need to do something in space that can help building peace between China and the US. And this is really like a crazy idea if you think about it like that. But then if okay, that's the big vision, right? But if you cut it into pieces and say, okay, what is the simplest thing I can do so that I contribute to building peace in space between all the nations? And then you come back to the very, very basics, the very basics of us humans. And then you say, okay, then I need to do something with humans. And then, okay, it shall be humans who have responsibilities because then they have power, they have the capacity to impact because they have power and responsibilities. So it's not, just like graduated or like nobodies. I'm caricaturing, of course. So you want to select people who are CEOs or executive vice president or, astronauts, etc. And people also who are driven by creating positive impact around themselves. So there is a question on the one hand of having had a very successful career, so that they are in position of power, of impacting, changing the reality around us, but also on the other hand having this personal drive to create something positive around them. And these are basically how we select our fellows. So once the idea more or less was there, and I also had a chance to myself before, I was a fellow of the French American Foundation. I'm also a fellow of the French China Foundation. So like to experience this kind of program where you meet with new people. And I wanted kind of to reproduce that, within the space. So that was really the inspiration. Then I just found like one person I trusted. We hadn't speak for 5 years, so really the call came out of the blue. But I knew the person was driven not by money, not by power, but by impact. And you want this kind of mindset when you create, a foundation. And then he brought someone else, and then we were three, and then we just started. And now now we have it's going to be the third promotion. We have more than 200 applications every year. And if we look back at also the commitments and the fellows who went through this program, it's a super, super high level. And I mean, you better speak with fellows to have real feedback, but I think people are uh, extremely not simply happy, but it changed something in their connections, in the way they act in space afterwards. This is the feedback that we receive.
Well, congratulations. And I think the big lesson in this story is just to start, right? Even when you have big ideas and they seem to be impossible because of the scale of it, or because it's just start somewhere, like just get the ball rolling and see where it goes. And often I think that we underestimate our capacity to do something with it, because we get bummed out because of the size and or the complexity. And but the science, just if you can just get the little momentum, then one thing leads to another, and next thing you have you get that big project. It's like walking, moving forward when it's one step at a time, and then you look back and you realize the distance that you created. But obviously you didn't jump. It was not one massive jump. It was just step by step, these little things that allowed you to get to where you are. Hélène, I want to go back to your exploration company, and that now that you raised the money and you're going to be building a vehicle to go to space. How is the situation in Europe in terms of launching capacities and spaceport? And I mean, is it going to be in Germany, or what's the logistic of that process?
Okay, so the company is headquartered in Germany, and we have a subsidiary in Bordeaux, so in France. As I was saying also at the beginning of this podcast, we're going to open a subsidiary in the US quite fast, so next year. The way we've organized ourselves basically, so why France and Germany? Because we wanted to build a European company from the start. So we didn't want to be a French company or a German company, because then you create jealousies between these two countries. And historically in Europe, when something big has happened, you can take, for example, the euro, which was something nobody would, thought that this would exist, or you can take the European Union. Also, I mean, big move. It happened because Germany and France aligned. So that's basically the political reasons to create the company on these two pillars. Of course, we've looked at what are the key competencies in basically very locally where we are. So Munich, we're going to have all the electronic equipments, all the software, and also the final assembly line is in Munich, because this corresponds to key competencies. You have one of the best software university in Munich. You have, of course, an amazing know-how about production machines, and serial production, etc. And we're going to have in France the propulsion, the system with regards to the engineering, also all which relates to re-entry, because the choice of Bordeaux was made because in Bordeaux the French produce what is called the M51, so basically the deterrence missile, and of course this missile re-enters. So you have a very, very specific knowledge about re-entry and material that can sustain basically re-entry. So that's currently the organization. It's working quite well actually, because as I said, we're going to deliver our first spacecraft already, like in October. So we are moving quite fast. It requires, of course, a lot of digitalization, so that we can make sure we work exactly using the same configuration, etc. And what is very nice is that we have 10 nationalities now in a team, which is about 30 people. So even if it's France and Germany, it actually we have way more nationalities than only these two countries.
And the spacecraft, is it going to be launched from Europe or from the United?
Yeah, so coming to your question, so we are launcher agnostic. We can be launched by SpaceX, we can be launched by Ariane, we can be launched also by the next launcher of Relativity Space, so the heavy one. We can be launched also by the heavy launcher of Rocket Lab when it will be when it is available. So we've designed our spacecraft so that we can also be launched by an Indian launcher. It works also. Um, our weight basically it's 8 tons, right? So we need a heavy launcher. We cannot be launched by a micro launcher. But yeah, we don't mind. I would say actually the spacecraft for the time being, and that was very important for us because, as you rightly pointed out, we have a scarcity of launcher today in Europe, and also the price of a European launcher currently is way more expensive than the price of an American launcher. So we want to be one of the most affordable on the market. We target basically today we target to be at 25% the price of sending something to the ISS, and in comparison to the other vehicle like the current price of using Dragon or using Cygnus or we are 30% below. I know that some competitor can go down, but and so if you want to really be affordable, you have to fit with, I would say, low cost launchers, and you also have to be able to play the competition between the launchers. Otherwise, you will end up not being affordable.
Wonderful. And Helen, could you, I mean, the Karman Project and obviously the exploration company, and those are your big tickets on the table. But can you share with us some of the other projects that you're involved? I know that's your orbit, but your venture firm has invested in.
Yeah, a little bit. So just to be clear, the exploration company is really like 99.99% of my time. I started a Karman project and I'm chairing that project now, which is led by a wonderful team. So for Urania Ventures, which is basically my investment company, is a bit the same. So I started investment company, and now it's handed over to a wonderful team who is scaling the company. We invested about 20 startups today. We had 4 IPOs, so it was, I would say, it went quite successful for the time being. But the philosophy of investment is, number one, there is a need for breakthrough. So most of the breakthrough we have invested in, they are deep tech breakthrough because this is something we are familiar with, given our background. But there is a need really for a breakthrough, a breakthrough for good. So there is already like some years ago really a focus on impact, and of course there is the trust with the CEOs and the capacity to become a billion company after 5 to 6 years. But there is this notional breakthrough, and this is you can look at the portfolio. We have most of the portfolio is deep tech, 50% is space, but we also have invested in company which has nothing to do with space, like the media company Brute, because it's a breakthrough in the editorial line. It's a media which is focused on young, let's say teenagers, with short video, also like that engage their audience so that they can act afterwards in a positive manner. And we thought, okay, this is nothing to do with deep tech, but this is breakthrough, for the journalism basically. So, and the CEO is someone who is really really amazing. So when I had the opportunity actually to invest, we invested.
And what other projects that I mean, other than that one that you guys have invested in or supporting?
So we have invested in a company called ClearSpace in Europe, which is basically a debris removal company, which has won a very big contract from the European Space Agency, about 75 million. So they are today basically the European leader of debris removal. We invested in a company based in India called Astrom, which is a company which is for the time being producing basically distributing internet access to the populations, and they are preparing also constellations. So I really love this, you know, local know-how that's going to serve the local population. And the CEO is an amazing, very very impressive woman actually. We invested also in a micro robot company called Robote, which is producing micro robots for health. So really being able to go inside and very, very with a lot of precision, basically, to bring the medicines or the active principle at the right place without creating too much damages, on their way in our body. We've invested in companies also producing in a completely new way, actually, electricity through hydrogen. So very, very diverse. That's an energy company, so very diverse company. Also, a company focused on space tourism called Orbite. Yeah, so that's just some examples, and also a company which is doing nuclear propulsion for space. So that's a very long-term bet. But speaking about space exploration, we cannot ignore nuclear propulsion. Nobody knows when that's going to come, but that's an energy that will come at some point in time, I believe.
I love it. Really love it. Just the spectrum of investment, but the strategy of supporting all these different initiatives that, as a whole, as an ecosystem, elevate, together is just not one, like really one solution, but it's all these pieces together that, that come together. Helen, um, you have, I mean, you were in the aerospace, you started an engineer aerospace with Airbus, and you're doing all these amazing projects. You have 4 children. Now, I know that we have issues and challenges on the planet, but when you talk to your children, are you inspired about the future? Do you see a bright future for our species as we? I mean, I think I know the answer, but what do you say to your children when you talk about the present and the future?
Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur, so I think I'm an optimistic by nature, and so I trust that we're going to find the solutions, to take care of our planet. When I speak with my children, I mean, first I'm amazed by them, but that's not very rational because of course I'm their mother, but I really try to help them or to support them in thinking with their own mind, thinking free, thinking independently. I trust that we have in each of us the desire to do things in the right manner, to do good things. When you see very, very little children, for example, when an adult is not fair, this creates a huge, can even create despair, this unfairness of adults. But this shows, that these very young children have in their heart, and nobody knows how, but a very very good sense of what is fair and what is non-fair, and what is non-fair actually hurts them and can hurt them very hard. So it means that we have this desire, I think, in ourselves to do good. Sometimes it's hindered, sometimes, the difficulties of life makes that we cannot express it anymore, and we do a lot of bad things around us, but I trust everyone has it. So I try to give to my children enough trust so that they simply can express this desire, this drive to do good around them, and also to exert their mind, their reason, to think in a free manner. Because we have so many people around us who say, hey, you better do that and that, or, you need to have this and this step in your career because then you're going to succeed this and that, or you're going to, this kind of studies at university, or you need to, be good at math because math, etc. At the end, I think every of us is like a musical instrument. So, you were speaking about food, let's say bottle of wine, whatsoever. You need to know who you are, and then so that you can express your music, your dance in the best manner to be useful to the others. And it requires a lot of freedom in the way you think, the way you act, and also a lot of trust in yourself, but also humility. Like, okay, and a lot of learning. So I encourage them to fail, to try to fail, and then when they fail, to learn from the failure. So, I'm also doing a lot of mistakes with them for sure. But speaking about the environment and the climate, this is something which is in their mind. So this is something that they integrate already, and they challenge us, their parents, about the way we live. But and this is something I see also now because I've been speaking with students at universities. I was presenting the exploration company, and 50% of the questions I received were, how do you protect our planet, or how what you are doing is contributing to protecting our planet. So this gives me a lot of hope, and I see also us as people who are building an industry. We are the one who have this responsibility on our shoulders. I'd like to speak about space tourism, for example. A lot of people say, okay, this is just bad. Okay, I think this is short-sighted seeing. If we would have applied the same reasoning with airplanes, simply the business would not exist. And what we need to do is to make this business sustainable. So at the Expression Company, what we're doing, we are using green propellant, for example. We are using biomethane for the cryogenic engine, green propellant, so H2O2 for the capsule itself. We have engaged in a certification process to become carbon neutral. This is not an easy task, especially in space, where it's very hard. But we have to pave the way, and while doing so, we will develop new technologies that will be more responsible for the environment. So I think we shall embrace the business opportunities and this exploration opportunity, and at the same time, as much as we can, try to be respectful of our environment, even to improve it if we can. And this is also another opportunity to develop new technologies. So this is more like how, I speak about that with my children, not we shall say, we shall do less, but okay, what can we do to do more, and to develop new technology to be more productive about the environment.
I mean, it's the same. It's really similar to what happened in 1900s when you had Edison and Tesla, trying to power the world, and the Wright brothers, taking the sky. A lot of people back then said, it was a waste of time when we have other more important issues than trying to power the world or take over the sky. But the reality is that the world that they created with these new technologies actually took care of a lot of the challenges that were at that time. And the same thing is going to happen now with space. It's not one at the expense of the other, but it's one for the support of the planet and all the issues that we have today. I mean, the incentives for innovation, let's say for recycling in space, are super big. That on Earth, the incentive for recycling are super hard because you have an abundance of resources. But when you go to space, that atom of carbon, processed carbon that you have with you, you can't just open the door and just throw it out. You're going to have to figure out how to reuse and recycle over and on and over again. You have to be super efficient because of the scarcity of the resources. So, I mean, I see all these innovations that people are working on, and all these innovations are for and at the support of the Earth and all the challenges that we have on Earth. I see these two working together.
Yeah, I see that completely, exactly what you mentioned, basically. I mean, space being very hard, you have to recycle everything, you have to be extremely frugal with your battery, whatever you do. So we're going to develop very frugal AI, for example. I mean, today, I mean, the way AI is working and the way you, for example, the car is driving autonomously, this use so much calculation, so much energy. So we just cannot do that on space. We'll have to come up with a new type of firmware, basically, and new type of not doing like lots of calculation and probabilities, but potentially more like functioning like the mind of a children or human body who is functioning with ways less energy than all these calculations that we're doing currently to take a decision, with robots, etc. So I see a lot of indeed innovation just because of this frugality which is needed, this everything to be recycled, which is needed. And also, I mean, that's an area where we speak less about, but I think in this the mental health, I mean, if we really take it seriously, right? So we just have chemical propulsion for the time being, and I think nuclear is still a long way to go. So it means that in the coming years, we may do, trips together for 6 months, and these people will have to be together for that period of time. So perhaps we'll also learn, just new ways to be happy or to like understand ourselves better for a very long period of time. So not only like pure technical technologies, but also I think the way, because these people will have to live together. It will not be just astronauts like hyper trained. It will be people like you and me, like normal people, in a boat together for 6 months. Something has to happen also from a scientific perspective so that we can sustain ourselves and not, end up in a big fight.
Absolutely, absolutely, Helen. We'll put all the links in the description where to find your projects, and they can find you. We'll put the link up for your LinkedIn profile. But any parting words of wisdom for the crowd out there that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think the last word perhaps would be just start, or that would be the advice I would give to anyone, because the experience I had basically was sometimes to come up with very, very bold ambitions. And then we just started small. Sometimes the feedback is nothing. Sometimes, like the Karman Project or the Expression Company, the feedback of the rate is a multiplier. It means that you have found a chord or like an answer. You are kind of on the way to find an answer to a question that many people also have in their mind or want to be solved. And when you have this feedback of reality, it's really amazing. So I would encourage anyone who has basically to dream bold, not to be afraid to dream bold, and then just to start, and then to listen, to dance with the reality. And if reality is not responding, so okay, let's better stop. But if reality is encouraging to continue, then yeah, it's just amazing because then you create, and the reality is answering even more. So yeah, just be bold and just start.
Well, your children are really lucky to have such an inspiring mother like you've been accomplishing and just leading with such great values and amazing vision. Are you based in Munich?
The family is based in the northern of Germany, a town called Bremen. Yeah, I spend most of my time between Munich and Bordeaux.
Well, I lived in Munich for a year and a half. It is one of my favorite cities. So
It's an amazing city.
next time I go to Munich, I'll let you know, and we can properly catch up over a nice meal and a bottle of wine. Helen, it was a pleasure, and I'm looking forward that our path across in real life. Congratulations on all the amazing accomplishments.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for having me, and I'm also very much looking forward to a glass of wine or beer in Munich.
Excellent. Thank you.